All right, let's dive into Vietnam. Today we're exploring Vietnam adventures. From Mekong River to Majestic Highlands.
Ooh, good one.
I know you're thinking about a trip, and this book, let me tell you, it's packed with regional insights and tips, perfect for planning. But
It is dense.
it is a beast, so we're going to help you pull out the good stuff, the most fascinating, useful bits.
Yeah, and right off the bat, the book really emphasizes how diverse Vietnam is. It's
Hmm.
way more than just beaches.
Oh, yeah. Chapter 1, it paints a picture of 3 distinct zones.
Okay.
So we start north, the Red River Delta. You've got Hanoi, the capital, bustling city, surrounded by those classic rice paddy landscapes, so iconic. Then you shift gears completely to the Central Highlands. Rugged mountains, dense forests, and a mix of ethnic groups you won't find anywhere else.
Right, right.
And then finally, you hit the Mekong Delta in the south. Life there revolves around the Mekong River, its canals, and those floating markets.
Oh, have you seen those? I mean, incredible.
I know. Okay, so alongside that geographic diversity, there's this history of resilience that really comes through. The book talks about Vietnam's long struggle against, well, everyone. Centuries of Chinese rule, then French colonization in the 19th, 20th centuries. Tough stuff.
It's a history of resistance, for sure.
Makes you wonder, how do you think all that history shapes how Vietnamese people interact with tourists today?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, it has to, right? It
Yeah.
suggests, to me at least, like this strong sense of national identity, maybe some wariness of outside influence.
I see what you mean. So in chapter 2, we get to the Mekong Delta, and
Huh.
it's clear this river, it's not just important economically, but like culturally too.
Vital, absolutely vital.
And the book really brings those floating markets to life, doesn't it? Imagine being on a boat, the sun's rising, you're haggling over fresh produce. Did the book actually get into specifics about the economic impact of the Delta?
They did. They said over 50% of Vietnam's rice comes from the Mekong Delta alone.
Yeah.
It just shows you how crucial it is. And the book does a good job of explaining how the river's tied into, like, the cultural fabric, how it shapes traditions, daily routines.
Yeah, but there's also this shadow hanging over it all. The book
Yeah.
doesn't shy away from the challenges the Mekong's facing.
Right, right. Pollution
Yeah.
from, rapid industrialization, agricultural runoff, and then there's deforestation. And then looming over it all, climate change. That's a big one. It's a lot of pressure on a delicate ecosystem.
For sure. Important stuff for any traveler to think about, especially those interested in ecotourism, sustainability, all that.
Absolutely.
Which, speaking of, leads perfectly to Ho Chi Minh City, our next stop, Chapter 3. It seems like the ultimate example of a city grappling with modernization, but still holding on to its past.
Yeah, and the book does a fantastic job capturing that contrast.
Oh, yeah.
Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon, as many locals still call it, it just pulses with this energy. Towering skyscrapers next to colonial landmarks. You've got bustling markets right next to serene temples. It's tradition and ambition all at once.
2 places that really caught my eye. The War Remnants Museum and Notre Dame Cathedral. What did the book say about those?
Well, the War Remnants Museum, as you can imagine, it's a very sobering experience, really dives into the realities of the Vietnam War. But from the Vietnamese perspective, which is important, you'll see artifacts, photographs, personal accounts, all highlighting the human cost of war. And then the Notre Dame Cathedral, a reminder of Vietnam's French colonial past.
I feel like those 2 together would give you a very rounded perspective.
That's fair.
Okay, and then Chapter 4 takes us to the coast, the Central Coast. We've got 2 cities packed with culture and history, Hue and Hoi An.
Hue is fascinating because of its ties to Vietnam's imperial past. It was the capital of the Nguyen dynasty for over a century. And the book really describes the grandeur of its imperial city. It's a sprawling complex, palaces, temples, gardens. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
And then there's Hoi An, completely different vibe. The book describes it as this incredibly charming town.
Yeah, the ancient town. It's a blend of architectural styles because it was such a major trading port back in the day.
Oh, I see.
Imagine walking those narrow streets at night, lit by lanterns. The Thu Bon River reflecting that warm glow. Almost surreal.
Sounds like a photographer's dream. And what struck me was how the book emphasized the blend of influences you find there. Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, all in Hoi An's architecture and culture.
Yeah, that fusion is what makes Hoi An so special. You see it everywhere,
Hmm.
in the shops, the restaurants, the temples. It's a unique cultural tapestry.
It's amazing how each city offers something so different, and we haven't even touched the Highlands yet.
Right.
Chapter 5 promises adventure, especially in Dalat, this cool mountain city.
Oh, Dalat. a welcome escape from the heat.
Ah, nice.
Nestled in pine forests, surrounded by natural beauty, the book talks about all the adventurous things you can do there. Trekking through forests, canyoning down waterfalls, exploring lakes, discovering pagodas.
And while we're, immersed in nature, can't forget the people who live there, the book talks about the indigenous hill tribes of the Central Highlands. What did it have to say about them?
The book really stresses responsible tourism, respectful tourism in the highlands, recognizing that connection the hill tribes have to the land. It encourages travelers to engage with local communities, support businesses that are locally owned, and really learn about their customs and traditions.
So, like, what would be a specific example of how someone could, respectfully engage with those communities?
I think homestays. Opting for homestays in villages rather than large hotels. And then guided tours led by locals, people who can share their knowledge and perspective.
Well, that makes sense.
And even just learning a few basic phrases in
Yeah.
the local dialect, as a sign of respect. Just small things to make sure your visit has a positive impact on those communities and their way of life.
Great tips. Okay, speaking of adventure, Chapter 6 introduces a region that sounds incredible, but maybe a little intimidating too. The Hajiang Loop.
Oh yeah, the book doesn't sugarcoat it.
Hmm.
Hajiang is rugged. Mountains, winding roads, steep passes, unpredictable weather. Not for the faint of heart. But the rewards, they're immense.
Like, what kind of rewards are we talking about? Paint us a picture.
Imagine breathtaking views, okay?
Yeah.
Limestone peaks towering over you, and then encounters with remote ethnic minority communities. And just that sense of accomplishment after navigating such challenging terrain.
Sounds like a truly immersive experience, pushing you out of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
into the heart of Vietnam, both its beauty and its diversity. But the book cautions against, like, romanticizing the journey, right?
Oh, absolutely. It makes it very clear this is not just a scenic drive. The roads can be treacherous. You need to be prepared. Reliable motorbike, proper gear, safety gear, and just a healthy dose of caution.
Careful planning is key.
Yes.
But for those who are up for it, the Hajang Loop, it sounds unforgettable. Okay, and then we arrive at Sapa in Chapter 7, famous for its rice terraces, those iconic images of Vietnam. Cascading down mountainsides, incredible.
The book describes those rice terraces as living artwork, which I thought was a nice way to put it. It's a testament to the ingenuity, the hard work of the people who have been cultivating those slopes for generations, creating this landscape that's both beautiful and meaningful.
What kind of experiences does the book recommend for Sapa?
Trekking through those rice terraces for sure, visiting remote villages, experiencing the hospitality of the Chufnamung people, and maybe even a homestay, to get a deeper understanding of their culture.
But Sapa has gotten really popular, and that brings challenges, right? The book talks about that too, doesn't it?
Yeah. It acknowledges the impact of tourism, how that influx of visitors has led to, concerns about overdevelopment, the environment, and even I guess you could say, the commodification of local cultures.
So navigating Sapa responsibly, it sounds like you need to be, well, thoughtful, aware.
Yeah, absolutely. The book recommends, maybe visiting during the shoulder seasons, staying in places that are locally owned, and supporting trekking companies that prioritize sustainability.
Good advice. Okay, and now, the big one. A destination that needs no introduction. Halong Bay. Chapter 8 dives into this natural wonder. Limestone karsts rising from the water, it's just iconic. But the book also addresses, well, the elephant in the room, right?
Right. It acknowledges that Halong Bay, while undeniably beautiful, it's become incredibly crowded, especially during peak season. It's a bit of a victim of its own success.
I can imagine. So for someone looking for a similar experience, but maybe minus the crowds, what does the book suggest?
Well, this is where those insights become valuable. It talks about alternative bays, islands, places that offer a similar landscape, but without the hordes of tourists. Like Bai Tu Long Bay. They have those stunning karst formations, but in a more tranquil atmosphere.
Finding those hidden gems, that's the key.
Exactly. And the book throws out a few other options. Lan Ha Bay, Cat Bay Island, even lesser-known spots within Halong Bay itself for those who really want that quieter, more authentic experience.
Love it. Okay, last stop. Phu Quoc Island, Chapter 9. Now, this seems like your classic beach getaway, but there's a hint in the book that Phu Quoc's got more to offer than just sand and sun.
Oh yeah, much more. It encourages travelers to look beyond those perfect beaches and dig into the island's character.
Oh.
Explore Phu Quoc National Park, tons of flora and fauna, and then, get this, Pepper farms.
Pepper farms.
Yeah, learn about pepper, this key ingredient in Vietnamese cuisine.
Hmm.
And maybe even try some squid fishing with local fishermen.
Now, that's not your average beach vacation activity. I'm intrigued. What else did the book say about Phu Quoc's, cultural side?
It points out this unique mix of Vietnamese and Cambodian influences. In the food, architecture, the traditions, Phu Quoc has its own identity shaped by its history and being so close to Cambodia.
It sounds like Phu Quoc offers that balance,
Yeah.
relaxation and exploration.
Exactly. You unwind on the beach, soak up the sun, and then you delve into the culture, those hidden gems. It's got it all.
All right, so we've journeyed from the Mekong Delta all the way to the beaches of Phu Quoc. I'm feeling inspired, but before we get too carried away, let's get practical. Chapter 10, that's all about planning your trip, right?
Yeah, tons of tips and advice to help you navigate the logistics of Vietnam travel.
Let's do a quick rundown of the key takeaways. First up, transportation. How do you get around Vietnam?
The book gives a great overview of your options. Flights are good for long distances. Trains are scenic for traveling between major cities. And then buses, those are usually the most budget-friendly for those shorter hops.
And there's always the option of renting a motorbike, which seems pretty popular, especially for places like, that Ha Giang Loop we talked about. But safety first, right?
Oh, absolutely. Motorbikes, they give you freedom, flexibility.
Mm.
But there's risk involved, especially with the traffic in Vietnam. The book really emphasizes you need a valid international driver's license, a helmet at all times.
Yeah.
And just be cautious on the road, seriously.
Good advice. What about visas? Anything travelers should know before they go?
Yeah, those visa requirements, they can be tricky. It depends where you're from, how long you're staying. The book says check the latest regulations way in advance. Apply online or through the Vietnamese embassy. Be prepared.
Always a good idea. Any final tips on cultural etiquette, things to keep in mind?
Respect local customs. That's key.
Mm.
Shoes off before you enter homes or temples, always. And dress modestly, especially at religious sites.
It's about being a mindful traveler, respectful.
Exactly. Travel with an open mind, be willing to learn, appreciate different cultures. That's how you have a positive, enriching experience.
I love that. So are you ready to pack your bags, embark on your Vietnamese adventure?
I am. But after all this talk about the different regions, I'm curious, which one are you most drawn to?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm feeling a bit of everything, honestly. The culture of Hue, Hoi An, that's calling to me. But then the adventure of the Ha Giang Loop, that sounds incredible. And, well, let's be real, those beaches in Phu Quoc wouldn't say no to that.
That's the beauty of Vietnam, though, isn't it? It's got something for everyone.
Absolutely.
So whether you're seeking adventure, culture, relaxation, or a little bit of everything, Vietnam has it all. But I think it's time we take a closer look at some of these regions, what makes them so special.
Yes, let's do it. Starting with, I gotta say, those floating markets of the Mekong Delta, they're really calling my name.
Let's drift down the Mekong. Okay, let's float on down the Mekong Delta, the rice bowl of Vietnam, they call it. What really struck you about this region, as we were prepping for this deep dive?
Honestly, it's those floating markets. The whole concept just, I don't know, it captures the imagination. The book talks about Kai Rang, and it's like boats overflowing with fruit, vegetables, even cooked food. You could buy your entire day's meals from a boat.
And the book makes it clear, these markets, they're not just for tourists. They're part of daily life, part of the economy. The
Yeah.
Mekong, it's like the artery of the region, right?
Yeah.
And these floating markets are the capillaries connecting everyone, keeping things flowing.
It's like a city, but on water. Its
Yeah.
own rhythm, its own rituals. But then reading about the Mekong's environmental issues, that really hit me. It's like this race against time to protect it.
The book doesn't sugarcoat it.
Mm.
Pollution upstream, runoff from agriculture, climate change impacts. It's a lot. But it also mentions some, I guess you could say, bright spots. Community efforts,
Yeah.
focus on sustainable fishing, restoring mangroves.
Right.
That's where responsible tourism can make a difference. Choosing tours and accommodations that are thinking about sustainability, that helps.
Yeah. Good reminder that as travelers, we have an impact. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Ho Chi Minh City. This place seems to just hum with this mix of history and modernity.
Oh yeah, the book nails that energy. Imagine walking down a street, all modern skyscrapers, and you turn a corner, boom, you're in a market. The smells, the sounds, the energy. Classic Ho Chi Minh City.
Sounds intoxicating. But it also carries the weight of its past, especially the war. What stood out to you about the book's, take on that history?
I think the War Remnants Museum, the way the book describes it, it's powerful. It doesn't shy away from the brutality, but presents it from the Vietnamese perspective, which is crucial. Personal stories, images of the war's impact. It's moving, makes you think.
It's important to engage with that history, even if it's tough.
Absolutely. It's about understanding.
And the Notre Dame Cathedral. Beautiful building, but also a reminder of the colonial past. Did the book talk about the significance of, like, that kind of architecture in Vietnam today?
It talks about how those structures, they're a complicated legacy. On the one hand, they're beautiful, they add to the city's character. On the other, they're symbols of oppression. I think the book wants us to see them with nuance, to grapple with that duality.
To acknowledge the full picture. Okay, let's head north now to the Central Coast. Hue and Hoi An, those cultural gems. I'm picturing myself strolling through those ancient streets, taking it all in.
Imagine stepping back in time as you walk through Hugh's imperial city. Huge courtyards, ornate temples, peaceful gardens. The book does a great job describing the details, those dragon-shaped roof lines, the colors on the walls. It's like a living history book.
And then there's Hoi An, that charming blend of architecture and, oh, the food. What details from the book really brought Hoi An to life for you?
The lanterns, how they create this magical atmosphere after the sun sets. Warm glow on the Thuban River, the streets. Picture yourself having some Vietnamese coffee at a sidewalk cafe. The sounds, the scents, the energy.
And it's not just Vietnamese influences that shaped Hoi An, right? The book talked about this mix of cultures.
Oh, yeah. Because it was a major trading port, Hoi An has this fusion of Vietnamese, Chinese, and Japanese influences. It's in the architecture, the food, the crafts, everything.
You could spend days wandering, finding hidden alleys, little workshops. Okay, let's go inland now, Central Highlands. That's a different pace entirely.
Oh, yeah. The book paints it as this breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively. Rolling hills, pine forests, waterfalls. The air is cool, crisp. Dalat, they call it the city of eternal spring. It's an escape from the lowlands.
What kind of things does the book suggest doing in Dalat?
Exploring nature. A bike ride around Xuan Huang Lake, hiking up Lang Biang Mountain for the views. Or venturing out to discover pagodas, coffee plantations.
Coffee plantations. Vietnam is famous for its coffee, right? Did the book talk about that?
It does. There's a whole section on Vietnamese coffee culture, the brewing methods, the flavors, the whole social ritual around coffee drinking. It's an experience.
Making me want a cup right now. But before we get too caffeinated, what about the indigenous hill tribes of the highlands? The book mentioned traveling respectfully in the region. What were some of the guidelines?
It stresses humility, respect, learn a few phrases in the local dialects, ask before taking pictures, be mindful. For instance, some tribes believe photos can capture a piece of your soul. You have to be aware of those things.
Responsible travel, it's more than just eco-friendly hotels. It's about how you engage with communities.
Exactly. You're a guest.
Okay, brace yourselves, because we're about to talk Ha Giang Loop. This sounds like a thrilling and maybe a bit daunting journey.
The book calls it a true adventure, one that pushes you, physically, mentally. Imagine those winding mountain roads, your motorbike climbing those steep passes, the wind. It's sensory overload in the best way possible.
The book paints a vivid picture, but it's honest about the dangers too, right?
Absolutely. You have to be prepared. The roads can be treacherous, weather unpredictable, and altitude sickness is real. Don't take it lightly.
What kind of prep does the book recommend for those thinking about tackling the Ha Giang Loop?
Reliable motorbike. Good tires, brakes, the right gear, warm clothes, rain gear, first aid kit. And honestly, you need to be in decent shape. Comfortable riding a motorbike in tough conditions.
And the cultural side, what kind of encounters does the book describe?
You get to meet the diverse ethnic groups in Ha Cho Tang. It encourages respect, curiosity, learn about their traditions, support their economies.
So it's more than just a motorbike trip, it's a cultural journey too.
Absolutely. It's about pushing your boundaries, embracing the unknown, connecting with Vietnam on a deeper level.
Okay, and then we come to Sapa, a region that just seems to embody the beauty of Vietnam. Those rice terraces, just incredible.
The book calls them a symphony of colors and textures. The way those emerald fields cascade down the slopes is both beautiful and humbling, a real testament to the people who've been farming those terraces for so long.
What should people do in Sapa, according to the book?
Trek through those rice paddies, visit traditional villages, learn about the Haishimong and Dao people, maybe do a homestay, experience their hospitality firsthand.
But Sapa's popularity has brought challenges, hasn't it? Didn't the book address that?
It does. It acknowledges tourism's impact, both the good and the bad. It's brought economic opportunities, but there are concerns about overdevelopment, the environment, and the commodification of local cultures.
So being a responsible tourist in Sapa, that takes thought, awareness.
Yeah, for sure. The book recommends visiting during shoulder seasons, staying in locally owned places, supporting trekking companies that are, doing things sustainably.
And now, the grand finale, Halong Bay. Chapter 8 explores this natural wonder, those iconic limestone karsts rising out of the water. But it doesn't shy away from the reality, does it?
Nope. It recognizes that Halong Bay, as beautiful as it is, has gotten extremely crowded, especially during peak season. Too much of a good thing, maybe.
So what about people who want that experience but without the massive crowds? Any suggestions?
The book has some great alternatives. It talks about other bays and islands that have the same landscape,
Right.
but fewer people. Bai to Long Bay, for example. Those karst formations, but a much more peaceful vibe.
It's all about finding those hidden gems.
Exactly. And it throws out a few more ideas. Lanha Bay, Cape Island, even lesser-known spots within Halong Bay itself.
Hmm.
Perfect for those who want something quieter, more authentic.
Love that. Last but not least, Phu Quoc Island, Chapter 9. Now, this seems like a classic beach destination, but the book hints there's more to it than just that.
Oh, much more. It suggests going beyond the beaches and exploring the island's character.
Oh, so?
Check out Phu Quoc National Park with all its plants and animals. Then there's the, get this, pepper farms.
Pepper Farms.
Yep. You learn about pepper, which is a big deal in Vietnamese cooking, and you can even try your hand at squid fishing with the locals.
Now, that's not something you see every day.
Yeah.
Intriguing. What did it say about the cultural side of Phu Quoc?
It highlights the mix of Vietnamese and Cambodian influences. It's in their food, their architecture, traditions. Phu Quoc has its own unique identity.
It sounds like Phu Quoc is the best of both worlds, relaxing and culturally rich.
Absolutely. Unwind on those gorgeous beaches and then dive into the culture. Find the hidden gems.
So we've gone from the Mekong Delta to the beaches of Phu Quoc. I'm feeling pretty inspired. But before we get too carried away, we should touch on the practicalities. Chapter 10 is all about planning a trip, right?
Yep, packed with tips for navigating Vietnam travel.
Okay, let's run through the key takeaways. Transportation, how do you get around?
The book gives a good rundown. Flights for long distances, trains are scenic if you're going between cities. And then buses, they're usually the cheapest option for shorter trips.
And then there's renting a motorbike, which seems pretty common, especially for places like that Hajiang Loop. But the book stresses safety, right?
Oh, for sure. Motorbikes give you freedom, but they're risky, especially with the traffic. It really emphasizes having a valid international driver's license, wearing a helmet always, and just being super careful on those roads.
Good advice. What about visas? Anything travelers need to know before they go?
Visa requirements can be a bit tricky. They depend on your nationality and how long you're staying. The book recommends checking the current regulations well in advance and applying online or at a Vietnamese embassy or consulate.
Always good to be prepared. Any last tips on cultural etiquette? Things to be mindful of?
Respect local customs, that's a big one. Shoes off when you enter homes or temples, always. Dress modestly, especially at religious sites.
It's all about being a mindful, respectful traveler.
Exactly. Be open-minded, willing to learn, appreciate other cultures. That's how you have a great experience.
Love that. Okay, after all this, has your perspective on Vietnam changed at all? What surprised you the most?
Honestly, it's the resilience of the Vietnamese people. All those challenges, wars, colonization, natural disasters, economic struggles. And yet there's this spirit of determination, of vibrant culture.
Yeah.
And they're so welcoming to visitors.
I feel that too. It's inspiring. On a lighter note, the food descriptions had me drooling. Pho, banh mi, those spring roll.
Oh yeah, Vietnamese food is incredible. Fresh flavors, the herbs, the balance of sweet, sour, salty, spicy. It's an adventure for your taste buds.
Well said. I think it's safe to say this deep dive has officially sparked our wanderlust. Now for the fun part, turning all this into an actual itinerary.
Right, now that you've had a taste, it's time to start planning your own adventure.
But before we let you loose on the world of travel planning, let's wrap up with a final thought, something the book poses at the end.
I like it. Lay it on me.
The book ends with this question about how experiencing Vietnam, with its mix of tradition and modernity, how that might change your perspective. What do you think about that?
It's a good question. Vietnam, it's a place where, where ancient temples sit next to these gleaming skyscrapers, where traditional life exists alongside like rapid modernization. It's like you can see the past, present, and future all at once.
It makes you think about how travel can challenge what you think you know. You encounter different cultures, different ways of seeing things. It can really change you.
Oh, totally. And Vietnam, I think, with that mix of old and new, It's a really powerful place for that kind of, I don't know, personal growth.
So what does all this mean for you, listener? We've gone from the Mekong Delta, those floating markets, all the way to Sapa with those serene rice terraces. We've explored the complexities of history in Ho Chi Minh City, and even gotten into the nitty-gritty of planning a trip.
We've given you a glimpse, a taste of what Vietnam has to offer, the flavors, the landscapes, the people. But now it's your turn.
Yeah, take the reins. What speaks to you the most? Is it the thrill of riding the Ha Giang Loop on a motorbike? The peacefulness of cruising through those limestone karsts in Bai Tu Long Bay? Or maybe it's immersing yourself in a hill tribe village, experiencing that hospitality firsthand.
Let those images sink in and let them spark your own adventure.
This deep dive, it's just the beginning. The real journey starts when you get there, when you experience it all for yourself. And when you do, come back and tell us about it. We want to hear your stories, your discoveries.
Yeah.
Until then,